Hello. Welcome to the June 19th, 2020 meeting of the Phoenix City Council, a discussion and consideration of citywide face covering policy. I will now call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman DeCiccio. Councilman DeCiccio. Councilmember.
Here.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilmember Garcia.
Sorry about that.
Here.
Councilman Nowakowski.
Here.
Councilwoman Pastor.
Here.
Councilwoman Stark.
Here.
Councilman Waring.
Here.
Councilwoman Williams.
Here.
Vice Mayor Guardado.
Here.
Mayor Gallego.
Here. Thank you. Thank you to the Phoenix City Council for coming together today. We are meeting as Arizona is experiencing record numbers of cases of COVID-19. Yesterday, we had more than 3,000 new cases in the last 24 hours reported. Arizona continues to break records of the type we do not want to break. Also important this week, Governor Doug Ducey gave local governments the ability to require face coverings, which has been reported as one of, if not the most effective step we can take in an easy way to slow the spread of COVID-19. So we come together today to discuss a citywide face covering policy. Thank you for joining us for this important discussion. I will turn it over to our Assistant City Attorney, Julie Cree, to introduce the item.
Thank you, Mayor. As you stated, we present to Council a declaration for emergency declaration requiring face coverings. And also, as you stated, as everyone knows, the Governor issued an executive order permitting cities to adopt policies regarding the wearing of face coverings in public to mitigate the spread of the virus. Phoenix City Code, Section 11-3, gives the City Council power to make emergency regulations for the public health and safety during an emergency. The declaration would provide that all persons aged 6 and older shall be in possession of a face covering when they leave their home or place of residence, and shall wear the face covering whenever they are within 6 feet of another person who is not a member of their family or household. A face covering is as described in the Arizona Department of Health Services guideline. Flexible face covering, any simple cloth covering over the nose and mouth, such as a bandana or scarf or homemade cloth covering. Exceptions within the declaration. First, persons within CDC guidelines who should not wear masks due to medical or mental health conditions, developmental disability, or condition covered by the ADA, children under 6 years old, persons with religious beliefs preventing wearing a face covering, and restaurant patrons while they are dining. Fifth, exercising outdoors or while walking or exercising within others from the same house and maintaining 6 feet social distancing from others not of the same household. Participating in organized group or team sports, exercise, or other physical activities, and in settings where it's not practical or feasible to wear a face covering, including rendering goods or services such as dental services or other medical treatments. Enforcement, per the Governor's order, requires any enforcement shall focus first on educating and working to mitigate the spread of the virus. The Governor's order requires an individual to be notified of the order and of the city declaration and requirements and given the opportunity to comply first. Usually, a penalty for violation of an emergency order under our city codes and state statute is a misdemeanor. However, our city declaration is going to limit the penalty to a civil citation after warnings and an opportunity for compliance. The city declaration requires enforcement to focus first on education and an opportunity for compliance, followed by a warning and then a civil citation only if necessary. The civil citation fines are going to be capped at $250, so it'll be $0 to $250 within the court's discretion. Businesses have the right to refuse service for failure to comply if no exceptions are applicable. The declaration is effective at 6 a.m. on Saturday, June 20th. Oh, and, pardon me, and public notice will be provided in English and Spanish. And here is a sample of a quick bulletin that the police have drawn up in order to distribute.
With that, Mayor, we'll turn it to you and the City Council for your discussion and decision on such an emergency order or any changes you would have. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and to the City Council for convening today. Before we go to the individuals wishing to address the council, do any council members have comments? Vice Mayor.
Yeah, so I just had some questions. So if you can just remind us again, I know you just said it, but just remind us again, what qualifies as a face mask?
Mayor and Council, we refer in the declaration to the Arizona Department of Health guidelines. They provide instructions to make a cloth mask, so it's really any cloth covering the nose and mouth.
So if I don't have one, let's say, and this is probably going to happen a lot at the beginning, if I walk out of the house and I don't have a face mask on, can then someone just pull up their shirt and use it as a face mask?
Mayor and Council, yes, that is correct, as long as they are covering their nose and mouth area.
Okay, and then my other question is, how is this going to be enforced?
Enforcement at this point would be by the police department, and if they were engaged, they would of course educate and ask for compliance first and offer a warning.
So is there a list of things that are we gonna write out all the different steps that people need to go through before they receive a fine?
Mayor, members of the council, so Chief Williams is here and we've been talking about this. The last slide that we showed is a flyer that the chief's staff along with communications put together. That will be the first order of business for any police officer who's called to do it. We actually do want to get the message though for people to, this is for people to do themselves. I'll use the analogy of stop signs. We have 80,000 stop signs in the city of Phoenix. We do not have a police officer who sits at every stop sign. What we depend on is people to comply with, in that case, stopping at a stop sign. If they don't and a police officer happens to be there, they'll have that engagement. But we have 1.7 million people in Phoenix who the council's order would say that they need to wear masks to keep themselves and others safe. If it gets to the point where police have to be engaged, which we hope doesn't happen, then the police have educational materials and the chief is issuing instructions about the need to educate and seek compliance before moving to a ticket. We want the ticket to be the absolute rarest of all possible exceptions because we want the public to understand how serious it is.
And then, okay, and then my other question is, we received a letter from Target yesterday. I'm hearing from workers at the supermarkets as well. And I think I said this as well when we were talking about enforcing masks on the buses, is that I just don't want us to be in a situation where we're asking employees to be the enforcers. I just want to make sure that we're staying away from that we're not putting workers in the situation of enforcing this in any place. And I know that's one of the biggest concerns that we're hearing from the private and the public sector when it comes to different companies and when it comes to the workers. I just want to make sure that that's not what we're doing.
Vice Mayor, That is correct. We are not expecting workers or employees to be the enforcement agents of this. We are expecting individuals to take personal responsibility for themselves to comply. If they don't, we're hoping that peer pressure, in the same way that we all stop for stop signs even when there's no police officers around, that peer pressure will have people comply with this order. But if it comes to it, it would ultimately be our police who would deal with that. But again, Chief Williams is being very clear with them, and the order is clear that they lead with education.
And then what are we doing about signage? I think you're right, like stop signs, everyone knows what a stop sign is. And now with this, are we gonna be putting signage all over the place? Or how is it that we're working with the grocery stores or with any of, or the Targets of the world, places that people do come to on a daily basis? Is there any way that we're working with them, or is there a way where we can work with them and helping them get signage?
Vice Mayor, absolutely. We've seen our sister city in Tempe has done something where they've put a signage, draft signage or prototype signage on their website. We can also do the same with our information. We can make it available on the phoenix.gov coronavirus website and let people have an example of what they can use in their business, or they can use the one that we put on our website. And we will put that in both English and Spanish.
Because I think it'd be good if we had, maybe like a couple of billboards where we stated this, I don't know, maybe on the light rail, on a couple of buses, right? Just so that we get the word out there and we help people comply with this. I mean, I've heard from other cities that, it was a little difficult at the beginning, but then as people saw the signage and heard the message out in their cities, it was a lot easier for people to comply with it. So if we can work on some of that and work on signage and work on this message, and we do everything that we can to get the message out there, I think it will be easier for people to comply. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. An excellent suggestion. Go to Councilmember Waring, followed by Councilwoman Pastor, followed by Councilmember Garcia, followed by Councilmember DeCiccio.
Thanks, Mayor. I appreciate it. So I just had sort of a couple questions relating first to what we did. Less than 72 hours ago, we voted on a mandatory policy for our buses. Betty mentioned it, but I mean, at the time, mandatory was the most expansive use of the term mandatory I ever heard, because if you showed up to our bus without a mask, you still got on the bus. Nobody was going to kick you off the bus. Nobody was going to fine you, or there wasn't going to be police interaction and so forth. Somebody might say something to you, but that was it. Now that was less than 3 days ago. And the thinking was, we don't have enough officers to police every bus. We didn't want to put the employees in the position of really like trying to enforce this, as Betty addressed. Carlos brought up the excellent point that, it could disproportionately impact communities if there was some sort of fine system or something. Obviously, people who have to ride the bus have to ride the bus. That's just the way it is. That might be different than it might look in North Phoenix or the West Side or something else. And so you're going to have potentially disproportionate impact. So given that there was pretty much no enforcement mechanism and nobody was going to stop you from doing the activity, riding the bus, that you really shouldn't be doing without the mask, it wasn't really mandatory. I mean, it was really more like a statement of like what we'd like, but if you don't do it, nothing's going to happen. I don't know what's changed in less than 72 hours. I know the numbers have gone up, but we were having that same conversation less than 3 days ago. I'm just curious first, is our bus policy now obsolete? Because I assume now if you go to the bus 3 days later without your mask and there's an officer standing there, you are going to get fined, correct? Or certainly get talked to. And I assume we're not going to let you on the bus. Could Ed or somebody answer that? Like, how has that changed?
Mayor, Councilman Waring, to your question, this emergency order, is my understanding from the city attorney's office, would really supersede the previous one on buses, because buses operate in the city of Phoenix and they're public spaces. People would be required to comply with this order from that perspective. I just want to emphasize, this is not about enforcement and writing tickets. Because again, as you said, and as I noted with the stop sign example, we don't have enough police officers to enforce every rule. We depend on our residents to take personal responsibility to comply with lawful orders. If they don't, in this case, the direction is going to be to educate, and then if it continues, then there is ultimately an educational, or an enforcement component. But our focus is on that people should comply with the lawful order from the city council declared in an emergency, and if necessary, the police department will respond as they are able, and they have the tools, beginning with education, which could ultimately lead to writing a ticket, but they certainly are not going to be standing by buses to write tickets.
No, I understand it, and I appreciate that. It's just the underlying sort of things that Betty and Carlos talked about that were voted on. You know, I supported it just a couple days ago. Are still true. We are now adding the fine component. I am curious. So if you're out, I mean, unless you just forgot your mask in your purse or something and just forgot to put it on, which could happen in some cases, and then somebody addresses it with you, or a police officer addresses it with you, then you do have a chance to rectify the situation. In most cases, I assume if you're out and you don't have a mask, there's nothing you can do about it right then. I think we said, I'm sure accurately, and I don't think it's changed. You know, 3 days ago, we talked about we couldn't really even police our bus system, which has thousands of people. But as you alluded, Phoenix not only has 1.7 million residents, but you also have all the people who live in Scottsdale or Glendale who drive downtown to work and vice versa. So it's really the metropolitan area of more like 4.5 million people who could go flowing through Phoenix, be contacted by our police. I mean, how does the person, so now you've been contacted, you don't have a mask, and there's really nothing you can do about it. Unless there's a mask store like right next door, you're pretty much out of luck. So, like, are we keeping records of who's been contacted? Because you use the stop sign analysis, which I hadn't thought about. Obviously, people still go rolling through stop signs. They blow off stop signs. We don't want them to. Sometimes it's accidental. I left the thing in my purse would be that analogy, I think. But there's not, you know, there's just not a ton that a person can do to rectify this. So I thought about the, you know, our neighborhood services department, right? If your weeds are too high and your neighbor complains, we send you a letter. And I think the statistics they've given me is 92% of the people, it's not a fine. It's just like, hey, could you take care of this? And I think they've always said 92% of the people take care of it. Sometimes it takes a second letter. That gets you to 94%.
That's right.
You know, it's only like 2% that go to court. But we're sort of skipping that stage of the process, or we're not addressing it effectively because presumably the officer or whoever won't know if the person's done this before, unless there's something I'm missing. Is there a way to do something that's not like right to the punishment stage, but does keep a record so that we know? Otherwise, I'm not sure how education is going to be effective in this context. And I hope my analogy was clear to you, Ed.
Yes, yes, Councilman. So the flyers that we showed, which were developed by our police department overnight with communications, those flyers are the first line of contact. And then also, and the police have experience with other issues where they have sort of this in-between, as you described, Councilman. They do what are called field interrogation cards or FI cards, where they make a note that they contacted someone on a specific subject. It keeps a record for them, but it does not rise to the level of a warning or a citation or any other piece of paper that people are given. So there are steps that police are familiar with on other issues that are in between zero and ticket, absolutely. And the chief has built in one with a flyer, and then they have the second one with their FI cards.
So there will be record keeping, but to Sal's point the other day about kids, but you're not getting a record. Is that right? I mean, they are going to be writing this down, and it's going to be a record, but it's not like a criminal record where an employer would know about it or something like that. Is that fair?
That's fair. The chief is nodding at me, yes.
Okay, all right.
It is
So
not a
that's
criminal
at least-
record. It does not create any sort of criminal history at all.
But they will know if they contact you again, we contacted you before. Now, the odds of contacting any one person with the million, couple million people thrown through the city, that seems, that's going to take some effort, I would think. Can I ask what's going to happen? Because we've all seen the videos, of bars or restaurants that are packed with people not wearing masks. So if I was a TV station hearing this discussion, I'd probably go to one of those places, have tons of video of tons of people not wearing masks. And because I don't think any of us are under illusions that every single person is going to start wearing masks as of today, given this resolution. What are we going to, so somebody calls, how are we going to address that? I mean, shut the place down? Is it everybody gets a site?
Thank you, Councilman. I actually have Chief Williams is here. You've reached the outer limits of my knowledge of police enforcement, and so we're going to go to the professional. But it's similar to what the police worked out when it came to the original orders of the governor's orders originally for closing things like gyms and bars. But Chief Williams?
So members of council, Councilman Waring, what we did previously is we assigned a squad of community response squad folks to respond to those type of calls, because the community response squad individuals are now managing the protests in day 25 or so. We are going to assign the SROs that we have available that aren't in school for the moment to be that arm. But to your point of 100 people not wearing a mask, I don't have that kind of staffing to write 1,000 citations. As a city manager mentioned, we'll lead with education, we'll lead with flyers, we'll ask for compliance, and then I will dictate in my message to the employees that if something is so egregious that I do want, at minimum, a lieutenant on scene to kind of manage that and to make sure that we're notified. So we're leaning heavily with education, because this is a public safety, a public health issue, but that's how we would manage that. And also, if I may, to the city manager's point also of the field interrogation cards, if we have to make contact with an individual on a number of different times, we can quantify that by record in a field interrogation card or an FI report.
Okay, thank you, Chief. So it is, because those have been the videos that we've seen, right, of the bars that's packed or whatever. Does the owner of the establishment have any responsibility in this? I mean, because we're not closing. Ed mentioned Governor Ducey's orders, I think from when stuff did get closed. Are we doing that here? Do we have the authority to do that? Or how does that work? Or do we know?
Mayor, members of the council, Councilman Waring, whatever responsibility the business owners would have would be under the guidance in the governor's orders. Nothing in this action would change or impose any requirement on the building or on the business owners to do anything. So whatever they might have under the governor's orders now is what they would still have under this.
So that's really outside our purview, not discussed in this. And whatever's happening now is going to continue to happen. We won't have enough forms or staffing to actually, obviously, it's not necessarily one establishment per night. It's not like there's only one central location. There could be several. You could get calls on several, and there's really not much we can do about it, which is disappointing. I mean, most of the people that I see when I go on my walk or so forth, I see people wearing masks. Obviously you have to go to the grocery store. We've got health issue in my family, so I'm spending a lot of time at pharmacies. Most people are complying as far as I can tell. I understand the need for the mask. I wear my mask. I'm about as far from anti-mask as you could get, but I do feel like we're sending mixed messages, because I pick up my sports page yesterday and I hear that college and pro football players are going back to practice in a couple weeks. Now, I vividly remember playing football, and there was a lot of human contact there, and nobody was wearing a mask. I know they've changed the rules, but you still got people piling on top of each other. And so the university systems and the professional leagues are saying, we're going to be good. but we're telling the general public they have to wear a mask. We're going to have Major League Baseball potentially in Phoenix soon. It looks like there's a carve out for that, but obviously, just using a baseball example, catchers, hitters, and umpires are definitely not 6 feet apart. So that was a curiosity to me to see that in here. It definitely, I could see sending the public a mixed message, to say the least. And so, am I right that we are not going to be requiring the professional leagues? I mean, I guess the football is played in other cities, and they'll have to address it. But the baseball, how is that going to be handled? It looks like there's a carve out, but I kind of wanted to wonder because somebody's going to ask.
Mayor, members of the council, yes, there is an exception for organized group or team sports. That was not necessarily directed at professional sports, but to allow, the idea was that the professional teams or high school or college teams, people running those events would be required and would be implementing reasonable safety measures for those activities to continue to prevent the spread of the virus.
I just, we are telling people if you go to Fry's or wherever, not to single anybody out, you have to wear a mask or we're going to criminally cite you. But they're going to turn on their television and see games being played sans mask. I mean, can you see how that might seem a little strange? I do appreciate, most people I see when I'm out on a walk in my neighborhood, we all abide by nobody gets close to anybody, but most people don't wear masks either. Every guidance that I've seen says if you're outside and you're staying apart, that's fine. I get the indoor thing. That's a different thing. I did notice that it talked about businesses, and I don't have the text in front of me. I'm trying to read a couple different things. The businesses now have the ability to say, if you're not wearing a mask, you can't come in. But I would swear I've seen signs at different businesses. I haven't been very many places, frankly, but had to get tires. It's the way it goes, life. So I swear I've seen signs saying, if you're not wearing a mask, we don't want you in here. There was a law office I had to deal with. They made that very clear that, you got to wear a mask to come in. Aren't they already able to do that as a private business?
Mayor, members of the council, Councilman Waring, yes, a business owner, as long as it's not for an improper, illegal reason like discrimination, are allowed to decide who to allow to serve. And so the ordinance just simply clarified, that was included to clarify that there's no responsibility on the business to enforce it, but to clarify that they would have, under this declaration, the right to refuse service to individuals who weren't wearing a mask if they chose to do so.
Right. Presumably they could call the police, I guess, to come if somebody refused to wear a mask, to be removed. Is that a fair statement?
Mayor, members of the council, Councilman Waring, yes, that would be the way that would operate.
Okay, but we're not going to have enough officers to respond to every call, so that's unlikely. But still, all right. Well, thank you. I mean, I'm sure this is well intentioned and everything, but there are some gaps in what I saw as the logic, given what we just did, less than 3 days ago. The way we're talking about sports and so forth, and I'm pro sports. I definitely, want us to utilize facilities, and I understood that was not necessarily owned at the professional sports teams, but also at group activities. But it was sort of a curiosity to me how some of this was addressed, and I don't know how effective it's going to be, because I do think people are aware that there's a lot of information that wear your masks. There's also some countervailing information. I personally am supportive of the mask concept, and every little bit helps. But I don't know that this is going to accomplish what we intended to accomplish. And the downsides that were addressed a couple days ago in our conversation are still practical. If you can't afford masks, and we got a lot of people unemployed and so forth, you can cite people as much as you want. They still have to go about their business. They still have to go to the grocery store. They still have to take the bus to work if they're working. We don't have enough money to hand out masks. We discussed that. We didn't have enough money to do it on the buses. We're certainly not going to have to be able to do it for a couple million people in Phoenix per day. So I hope people don't get treated unfairly if we move forward with this. And I appreciate your time. I'm sorry for talking so long. I'll stop it there. Thank you, Mayor.
And Mayor, Councilman Waring, just one point to the issue of people who can't afford masks. That is why Ms. Cree references the Arizona State Department of Health guidelines, because they actually have guidelines where you could just take a T-shirt and tie it around your face like a bandana, and so you do not have to have something that's actually specifically sewn as a mask. You could have a bandana, you could have a T-shirt, a strip of cloth, anything that would that basically anyone could have. To address that question you raised.
Okay, Ben.
And it is a very important question. We have partnered at the city with Circle the City to provide masks for people experiencing homelessness. Earlier this week, we spoke about distributing masks at our transit centers. For $3, I was able to obtain a census mask, and those will be available in the community as well. So we certainly will not be providing 1.7 million masks, but we will try to provide masks to those who may struggle the most to get them and those who are among the most vulnerable. Councilman Waring brought up several important points. I want to reiterate a point that came up during his discussion. There will be no criminalization as a result of this policy because of how we've designed it. So we had the opportunity to make failing to wear a mask a misdemeanor, and this policy has chosen not to, so no criminalization around it. The goal here is public health. The goal is to send the strongest possible message to our community that COVID-19 is increasing, and that we all have a personal responsibility to fight COVID-19 as well as the ability to do so. So very important discussion that we are having today, and we are going to need our residents to lead the way on this policy for us to slow COVID-19. Our office received a very important letter from the Hospital Association telling us that risk of transmission can go down to 3% when people are wearing masks. So it is a tool that you can take in your own hands to save lives and slow the spread of COVID-19. I will now turn to Councilwoman Pastor.
So I really appreciate the dialogue, and it truly is a public health, and each one of us has a responsibility as a collective to take responsibility with our public health and others around us. What I have to say is, Councilman Waring, I enjoy the dialogue that we're having because at 72 hours, what happened is that the governor has given the cities the authority to make this, to require masks, to make this, and has now put it in the local government and cities to make this decision. In addition to that, 2 days ago, Tuesday, June 16th to today, we have 7,500 cases, new cases, and 93 deaths. So I think, you know, as we have been watching, we are on the rise, and we're going to continue to rise. And if we don't really look at what we can do to prevent the spread and really to protect our communities as our public health is taking to its latest, to its highest level, we have to step in and at least try to stop COVID-19. And I would say that's what's been happening in the last 72 hours. I also want to go to the right of refusal. Julie, the right of refusal, a business has the ability to refuse somebody's service if they are not wearing a mask. And that's up to the business.
Mayor and council, that is correct.
Okay. So it will take the responsibility of businesses that are willing and wanting to take that. They can take that and not be looked upon in a bad light, because I think they're also taking responsibility, because we also don't want to go into another shutdown. If we want to keep our economy healthy, we need to do everything that we can to prevent this. Now, I want to go back to something fun. I don't know if it'd be fun or not, but as you can see, I'm all layered up. So when we talk about guidelines and masks, I have a scarf right here and I double layered scarf, and I can go like this. Okay, I'm gonna layer myself off. I have a t-shirt that I cut, and I can go like this. And as you can see, it's for Pride. Let me take this off. I have a mask that somebody made me, and I can go like this and use. And then I have a mask that I can buy at the store for $1.50 and go like this. And if I want, I can use my shirt, button it up, and I can go like this. It's a men's shirt, but I can use it as a mask. So there are many different ways that we can use or find something to use a mask. Now, what I hope that is in everybody's home, but it may not be, I have a dish towel that I dry my dishes with. And I can go like this and use that as a mask. So there's many different ways that we can find material to create a mask for public health. And what I want to say is I know that I lose everything. So I have these types of masks in my car. I have one in my purse. I try to have one in the bag that I carry with all the kids' stuff. So as mothers, I would say we're always thinking and preparing to make sure we have what's needed to protect our family. And I think that's important that we can stop the spread and be able to be creative even with our own family on how we make masks. So really appreciate the dialogue and conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Pastor. That was impressive. I think at the moment, Councilwoman Pastor is the MVP of council members during the meeting. That was very cool to show how we can do that. Councilmember Garcia, followed by Councilmember DeCiccio.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have some questions for Chief Williams and then some back to the rest of us. Chief, how have we enforced the curfew or the restaurant and bar closures? How has that gone? Is there any examples of us having to use enforcement for those?
So Councilmember Garcia and the rest of council, we have not been enforcing the curfew piece. So much like this mask order, it would be upon complaint, we would go in, we would lead with education, but we have not been enforcing the public order. If memory serves you correctly, on May 31st, that order expired. So we were tracking previous to that the number of public gathering calls that we have, but we have not been enforcing the curfew in the restaurant piece.
Okay, great. Would you consider an officer approaching someone to either educate them or give them a warning, a lawful stop or a detention?
So Councilmember Garcia, members of council, what I think you're asking me is if we're going to drive around in cars and look for people that aren't wearing masks?
No, so in the moment that an officer is either warning or educating someone, is the person detained or is this considered a lawful stop?
So lawful contact if someone calls us in on a complaint. But again, we're not going to be proactive in this. To the mayor's point, to the city manager's point, to the legal point, this is an education piece for public health. As you're aware, we answer 56 or so hundred calls for service per day. So this would be one more piece of the equation for our employees, but we would lead again with education and it would be upon complaint.
Okay. I still would want a clear action. Let's say someone, how would you see it play out? I ran into someone, I saw them without a mask. I called an officer, the officer came. If the officer was warning or educating someone, would you consider that like a detention or a lawful stop? And the reason I'm asking, and I'm not trying to get you, is that there is immigration consequences when it comes to lawful stops. And we had this conversation in our ad hoc meeting and previously in our public safety subcommittee. I just want to be clear. I do not want someone's status to be asked or someone to end, looking through their warrant or whatever the situation. I don't want it to escalate to something else. And so that's why I'm asking.
So Councilmember Garcia and members of council, quite frankly, this is putting law enforcement in a challenging situation. So I don't want it to lead to an ICE stop or an ICE hold or an arrest. That is not what we are going to be doing. We're going to hand folks a flyer and pretty much turn around and walk away. In egregious circumstances and cases, if for some reason it turns into a contact that we have to issue a citation, I will have to mandate a supervisor be present to do so. So it is my preference, and I will definitely message this to my employees, that the flyer, and I don't know if the flyer is up on the screen, Julie, but we have a flyer prepared that talks about wearing a mask, who should wear it, give them the flyer, turn around and walk away.
Okay.
Want me to hold
And
it up?
then you talked about writing things down. I know previously we've had conversations about jaywalking and folks in the medium, and one of the issues we have is that our systems are currently unable to track any warnings. Is that the case? And would be using a different system to track these warnings? Do you know what I'm talking about?
So if you're talking about the FI stop, you mean tracking? Is that your question? Is it going to be in a different system?
Yeah, and so I know for a fact that the department said that in jaywalking or in situations of people being in the medium, we did not have the ability to track warnings. Therefore, we were being asked to think about shifting the policy to arrest without warning. In this situation, would we be able to come up with another system? Could we use COVID dollars for this to make sure that we can actually track warnings?
So Councilmember Garcia, members of council, so we are, because we want to recover costs also for this, because this is COVID related, it is going to allow us the ability to track the number of FIs that we've issued, as well as track the number of calls that come into our crime stop of these type of calls as well.
Okay. And then back to Ed. Thank you, Chief. How much PPEs do we have available? And in specific, is there an idea of how many masks we have available at the city?
The last I heard from our chief financial officer, it's either 200,000 or 400,000 that we had on hand earlier this week or last week. I think it was 400,000. We have distributed those. We distributed to the transit system. We have to have them for our own employees first to keep them protected, but we do have some PPE on hand, and we continue to seek those supplies.
So, but we don't know how much or if we need more.
I think we're always seeking more. We believe we have enough PPE for 4 to 5 weeks of, I know we have a 5 to 6 week supply of the N95 masks for our first responders, in which they need that extra level of N95 protection, largely our fire and police officers who are dealing with critical incidents where someone may be known to be infected. The mask, the paper mask, as Councilman Pastor demonstrated, we have a couple 100,000 of those on hand. Those are first and foremost for our own employees as they're working for protection. We were able to make some available to the transit system in order to have some to give out to transit riders.
And we still have money that we have not assigned, right? We still have money left over from the initial CARES Act.
Councilmember, that is correct. We do have money, even money that we have assigned to PPE has not all been expended. And so we are, our chief financial officer and her staff are continually placing orders and looking for more PPE. So the money aspect of it is not our issue as much as it is supply and logistics of getting it here. But we do have the ability to continue to order large quantities of simple mask coverings.
Thank you. Mayor and to the rest of the council, I think this is something that, and we've talked about enforcement, this is something we're not going to get everyone to wear masks simply by scaring them with a $250 fine. I think this is definitely a culture shift. I would want us to move some of that unallocated money for masks that we can make available to the public. as many as we can. And I also know that schools are coming into or thinking about some of them at different times. They're coming into starting their school years. And one of the things I want to suggest is that we use some of that money to also support schools in granting them PPE, both for their students, the parents, and the teachers. And with the first suggestion I made, I think we work with organizations, senior centers, even our officers to make sure that they have a good amount of masks that they can hand out when these conversations or these warnings or education moments are happening. And so I know that supply is a problem here, Ed, and everybody in the world is trying to buy masks. I'm wondering, have we thought about this before, or is this something that we have to do now to both support the schools in reopening and also the community and the public at large?
Councilmember, thank you, and I think you're onto something there. I just spoke yesterday with the county manager, and actually Maricopa County Department of Public Health is doing some outreach to schools with what they're calling PPE starter kits for schools. So I know Maricopa County Public Health Department is, but certainly if the council were to want to spend some of our already allocated coronavirus relief fund money that we have for PPE or for our public health efforts to getting a supply to be able to hand those or make those available, that is absolutely something we can pursue. I don't know how quickly we can get the supply, but to your point, if that's the goal, we will have the chief financial officer will continue to acquire that, and we'll make those available upon direction of the council.
Would that be needed to be added to this ordinance motion? Is that something we'd have to do separately? Well, how would that happen?
Councilman, I think we have money, to your point, I think we have the money already allocated in the PPE category and also in the community health category, which is not fully expended. And so we can use that. When we come to speak with the council on Tuesday, in our regular coronavirus item, we can also give you more information. But I don't believe that we require the council to take a specific action on that today, because you have already acted to create those categories in the PPE and in the community health areas that we can direct those funds towards that effort.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember DeCiccio.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for having the meeting today. This is directed to Chief Williams. And so, Chief, I appreciate the fact that you're answering things directly on that. So to Councilmember Garcia's points, this is no different than a traffic ticket, correct?
So Councilmember Garcia, members of council, it would be more like a parking ticket rather than a traffic ticket.
Well, it's still a civil violation, but it still fits in that category.
It is.
So as a traffic ticket or a civil violation, we are still, as a city, required to follow SB 1070, correct?
So Councilmember DeCiccio, for civil violations, we aren't bound by the same rules as we are with the other citations. So I think what you're talking about, a traffic ticket requires you by state law to have a driver's license in order to operate the vehicle. You walking around without a mask isn't the same as operating a motor vehicle.
But it still fits into the same category, does it not, under the civil violations that we're required to do?
Councilmember DeCiccio, it would be a violation of the city order versus a Title 28 violation, which is different. That's a state violation.
Okay. So we have, as a police department, we have a duty to report, correct? A duty to follow the law and to report.
So Councilmember DeCiccio and members of council, we do have a duty to report. However, if in the conversation we mentioned to you earlier, this would be upon complaint. So this isn't Phoenix police officers roaming around the city looking for people who are not wearing the proper PPE. This would be upon complaint.
And you will get complaints because this thing is a heavily divided issue. And so to Councilman Waring's points too, if you were to make this just a mandate without the police action, you would get unanimous support today. I'd be supportive of that. But when you involve the police actions of what you say you'd like to do, but you still have to follow the rules. You still have to follow the laws. And there will be individuals that say, I'm just not going to do it. How is that going to work?
Councilmember Garcia, members of
Where's
council.
you get a complaint?
That is the difficult challenge for us in these times, is putting law enforcement in this position, which is why we've mentioned and said over and over again that we're going to lead with education, much like we did previously. When the previous order was mentioned, we never issued a citation. We came pretty close to issuing one, but we never did issue one, and I'm hopeful that the public will comply and that we won't have those issues. As I previously mentioned too, it's placing the Phoenix Police Department in a precarious situation. But I will properly message to my employees, will have a supervisor respond in the event it gets egregious, and try everything possible to de-escalate and lead with education.
And I appreciate that, but at the end of the day, after you've given them, the rules, or to give the individual the warning or the education, the person's still going to probably say no at some point. You're going to run into that. Then you're going to give them a warning, and they're still going to say no. Then you have to make a decision. What do you do there? And it's similar to what happened in Philadelphia, where the police department dragged that guy off that train. So, I mean, if we were to, again, I'm imploring this on the other council members, we can always step up the police involvement part of this if we feel that we're not getting any type of compliance. But to start off right off the bat with a police action, I think is problematic for me considerably. So and let's go to the record part. So a civil violation still stays on our record, correct? We have a record at that point.
So Councilman DeCiccio, if we complete a record or a field interrogation card, yes, that is going to be part of someone's record. It won't be a criminal record necessarily, but it will be on record that PD maintained or made contact with you, and it will be in the system.
Right. That's the first stage. The second stage is then, let's say there's a ticket issued. That will also be on the individual's record, correct?
Councilmember Garcia, DeCiccio, and other members of council, technically, yes, it could be on their record if issued a citation, but maybe I'm overly optimistic. I'm optimistic that we won't even get to that point, that we're still handing out documentation to individuals, and if we have to complete the FI card, so be it. I'm just hopeful that it doesn't get to that.
Well, I am too, and I would hope that we don't, but we have 1.7 million people in the city of Phoenix. There's likely going to be one person not happy with this. So that's why I keep going back to using the police officers, sticking them in the middle of this fight, this debate. And you're going to have, and I've seen it on Nextdoor already, where individuals are already trying to shame others. I've never seen a society where we've all gotten into the whole shaming thing. So you've got people that are very divided right now, and this is a really bad time to be using our police department for this. A really bad time, because now it's going to stick you right in the middle of this, and it should not be. If we were to mandate it and just say, hey, we're going to encourage it strongly, then identify those hot spots and then address those specifically, I think we'd be better off. So I'm really worried about that. And I think that the police department is too. So from my end of it, I want to make sure I make this really clear. The whole shutdown, everything else, was not meant to get rid of the COVID, the virus. It is not going to go away. There are only two ways well, actually, there are three ways this can go away. One, to develop a vaccine, get close to 70% of the population vaccinated, and that wouldn't happen for at least 18 months. The other is for this to create some type of herd immunity, where enough people get it, and then it creates basically a bubble around individuals. The third way is for this virus just to disappear. And under all these circumstances, we are going to be living with this virus for a very long time. We have to learn how to manage it. Is there a timeline on these masks? How long are we going to have to do this? Does anyone have an answer for that?
Yes, Councilman, Assistant City Attorney Julie Cree.
Mayor and council, this is a declaration under the local emergency, so when the council takes an action to revoke their local emergency, then this would also automatically be revoked.
Mayor, members of the council,
So- go ahead.
also the council could take action sooner to that, to repeal this particular declaration if they chose to sooner, if the circumstances no longer warranted it, before the emergency was actually ended.
It could literally go a year or more. It could even go 2 years at that point. Until the virus goes away, we will always be in a state of emergency. Always. As a city, as a state, and as a country, actually as a world. We're going to be having to figure out how to deal with this for a very long time. The lockdown, all it did was delay it. And all it takes is one person, one out of 1.7 million people, to start the reinfection occurring again. So it's going to happen. We're going to have to deal with this as a society and figure it out. We can't constantly be in shutdown mode, in fear mode. It's good to be cautious, but we should not be in fear mode to where everything that we do is geared toward, we gotta stop everything. It's just not gonna happen. So people need to be responsible. Wearing the mask is the first level of responsibility. And again, you've heard me twice say this today, the mandate part is the part that's going to be, the police action is the part that concerns me the most. We've already got a police department that's under fire. Shouldn't be. They're doing an amazing job, but we're sticking them in the middle of being the mask police. And regardless of what's said here, it's the law that matters. And the law is very clear as to what we can and cannot do. Thank you, Mayor.
This is about public health and education. We need masks to be open. Masks and other non-pharmaceutical interventions have proven very effective at slowing the spread of the virus. The virus will be with us likely even after there is a vaccine, but this is also about making sure that our public hospital and health system has the ability to respond. Our public health officials have told us that we are on a collision course by July 4th if we do not do anything differently. Our Phoenix Police Department responded and enforced the stay-at-home order in a very responsible way. It is deeply irresponsible for elected officials to create and incite controversy. Councilwoman Williams.
Councilwoman Williams, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Oh, I hit the wrong button. Sorry. When a police officer confronts someone without a mask and the person says, I'm one of those listed as an exception, do they just take their word for it?
Councilwoman
nothing else
Williams,
happens?
members of council absolutely take their word for it. Again, back to the point of leading with education, we're not going to just ask someone for their medical status or other things. We're just going to take it at face value.
Okay, I think that's very important for people to understand, because I know people have contacted me very concerned because they have a health problem, and they're very worried about being arrested. Now, I know they're not going to be arrested, but I just was very curious. I'm very comfortable in telling them they will take your word. So thank you very much.
Councilwoman Pastor.
Mayor, okay, I'm ready to go. You know, Councilman DeCiccio brought up the Philly incident, and what it did, it reminded me of what I saw on his chief of staff's Twitter. And it stated that on his Twitter, he said that I was stating that my goal was to create that Philly incident for mass transit. And I just find that inappropriate to make fun of a public health issue and turn it into a dynamic with the police. And I don't appreciate the sarcasm. And so I just want to put that on the record because that's not what we're doing, and that's not what I am doing.
So Councilwoman Pastor, members of council, absolutely that's not what we want. To be honest, Phoenix PD has been watching what's going on across the country, and having reached out to Commissioner Outlaw personally to talk through that scenario and situation, we will not have Phoenix PD do the same thing. And I've talked to the executive team, our command team, and we will make sure that we message that to our employees.
And in fairness to SEPTA and Philadelphia, they have changed their policy since that happened, and it would not happen again today. Councilman Waring?
So just going back to something that was said earlier that I was still just slightly confused about, and also to mention something, I think it was Councilman Garcia, I certainly would be supportive of using COVID money that we have to purchase masks for people. I know there's already some of that going on in private sector and so forth, but certainly I'm not disputing that the masks are beneficial. Some people have different views. Obviously, that's where personal choice comes in. But certainly any tool in the toolbox, and I think that would be effective use of that money. So I'd be supportive of that if that's something that would move forward today or some other time. But I did want to go back to just a couple comments about the police interactions. I had received I guess it wasn't an email, a text from the head of the Sergeants and Lieutenants Association. They respectfully ask, I assume they're okay with me talking about this now because they sent it. It's now a public record. And I assume they also sent it to other members of the council, not just me. You know, they asked not to be, I think to sort of Sal's point, I don't think he mentioned this specifically, but this particular document, they asked not to be put in this situation because they're overstaffed. Again, it was echoing Sal's words, but you know, I got it from an official source saying basically the same thing. You know, that's certainly something to be taken under consideration in these times when they are stretched thin, trying to enforce different things that wouldn't have been thought of a month or so ago. But in terms of the record, so everybody's been, I've had a couple traffic tickets, not certainly since I've been on the council, but I've had it. You know, you see the officer behind you and it's awkward. I get that it's not, in my case, you know, it's not like a criminal major thing, but you know, your insurance finds out about it. You know, you got to go to traffic school. Parking ticket, less so, but you know, everybody's like, if they see the person writing out the ticket, that happened to me once, they're like, geez, you know, but it is a little bit with the uniforms and everything, even if you know you're not doing anything wrong, it's a little bit of it. It can be a little intimidating to have an officer approach you for any reason. It just is. Be the most law-abiding citizen in the world, and it just is. So going back to the record issue, so I thought I had clarification, but then I got confused, and that may simply because of my fault. So the police see somebody not wearing a mask where we feel they should be wearing a mask. They don't claim an exception. And the officer contacts the person, and they hand out the warning card, I guess. So then they write down that person's name. And the chief said something that was a little curious to me. I think in response to Councilman Garcia, I think it was, about warrants and stuff. Because I've been on ride-alongs, right? And you go because somebody's playing music too loud, and I've seen it happen, and the next thing you know, they're like, hey, what's your name? And they run it through the system, and a bunch of warrants pop up, and next thing you know, it's somebody's getting arrested. I've seen it happen. I'm sure it happens probably all the time. So my question is, if they're entering the name in some system so that if the person gets contacted again about not wearing a mask, when you're entering that in the system, to Sal's point, I would think you'd take a glance and go, oh, they got 5 warrants. Is that not going to happen? Because honestly, if you've contacted the person for a legal reason, you know, they could be dangerous to others or what have you, or certainly to the officer themselves. I mean, if it's me, I'm definitely looking. Are we saying the officers are prohibited from looking under that circumstance? Or to Councilman Garcia's point, are they definitely going to look, and then you could get booked for something having nothing to do with masks? I guess I'm asking, you know, which is it?
So Councilmember Waring and members of council, Civil citations don't appear on anyone's record. So in the event, and we go back to upon complaint, I think there's this presumption that Phoenix PD is going to walk around and just start issuing tickets and citations to people just on the fly, and that's not going to happen. So upon complaint, we make contact with the individual, give them the information, but again, the civil citations and parking tickets and those kind of things, per our legal unit, doesn't appear on anyone's record. Now, if we do cite someone, they give us our name, they give us their name and we run them and they have a warrant, that could lead to an arrest. So in those instances and circumstances, again, body-worn camera footage will show us what we need to see. And I'm hopeful that and trusting that my employees will continue to be professional. But again, we're going to lead with education and not lead with enforcement.
My ignorance, because I'm not an officer. But how are you, so I get that if you get cited for this and it's a civil complaint, that doesn't go on your record. But when you have the name in front of you and you're standing there with the person, you are going to enter them into some data system. Maybe I'm misunderstanding. Is it a separate data system so you wouldn't see the warrants? And I almost think, maybe I'm speaking out of turn because I'm not an officer, but if I'm walking up to someone because they're not wearing a mask, I kind of going to want to know, once I've got the name, like, what am I actually dealing with here? Is this person dangerous? You know, whenever I've seen stops, again, on ride-alongs, and okay, it's a few ride-alongs. I'm not an expert by any stretch. I'm not claiming that in any way. But, I mean, in my experience, they run them through the system. I mean, on a traffic stop or whatever. So I assume it's the same system. And if you are going to be entering the names to keep a record for the next time on the mask, I don't know how you wouldn't know that they have warrants, and frankly, why you wouldn't want to know, just to be safe like you would on a traffic stop. But maybe I've got things out of order or something, and so I'm open to clarification.
Councilmember Waring, members of council, you're providing scenarios and situations that could happen. But again, I'm just going to fall back to this is a public health issue. I've mentioned previously that this is definitely putting PD in a precarious scenario and situation. We will lead with education. There may be times when we stop people that they have warrants, that we're going to have to deal with the criminality piece of that. I'm just hopeful that the public complies.
Okay, Mayor, I would just like to echo a point that was made by Sal and sort of echoed by myself when I first started talking the first time. You know, 3 days ago, and I understand completely what Councilwoman Pastor was saying about the situation has gotten worse, certainly the last couple days. Absolutely, I understand the numbers are what the numbers are. But 2 days ago, we were having roughly the same discussion about things are getting worse. It could get worse by July 4th, you know, still, and so forth. We could have to do another shutdown, or the state could, or whatever. So it hasn't changed that radically in a couple days. And a couple days ago, more to then Sal's point, you know, we were okay with the buses. Sal and I voted for it. I think everybody voted for it. I think it was 9-0. We're still going to let people on the buses. Somebody is going to say, hey, we really need you to wear a mask. But the police weren't involved. I think the chief just used the word, I think it was precarious. So if I'm wrong about the use of that word, you know, I think I don't have it right in front of me, but what the Sergeant Lieutenants Association wrote me was, you know, we'd rather not be put in this situation when we're stretched thin already with all the other stuff going on. I just don't know that it's changed so much that we couldn't do a mandatory policy without the police involvement today. The police involvement does give one some pause for thought. I think it sounds like for several members of the council, or maybe it's a couple of us, but it is, the chief pointed out that, okay, we don't want these situations to happen, but to Sal's point, you know, with 1.7 million people, or to my larger point, it's not just the 1.7, it's the people flying here from other cities who aren't going to know, who are driving around on our streets, because we still have some tourists. We still have some people coming here for business. We're still going to have some people driving in from Scottsdale. Maybe they'll have a policy of their own, so they're used to it. Who knows? But that's a lot of volatility. At some point, there will be a contact, as I described, and And that could go wrong in a lot of ways, and like any stop, I'm sure, but it just shouldn't be taken lightly. And the $250 fine that's a decent sized fine. I don't know what the analogy would. It's been a long time since I had a traffic ticket, but I think that's a decent sized traffic ticket. I would be supportive of the masks, us giving out as many masks as we can, afford with the federal government. We wouldn't be able to distribute 1.7 million, but a lot of people, I'll buy my own masks, but I recognize there are people who are really hurting now, even more than perhaps before. And so we need to get masks out there to the extent we can. I don't know if we could put them on our buses or, how that would work, but it's certainly something to consider. And any private sector help that we could get would be fantastic as well. But if people were willing to talk a little bit more about the police and enforcement component of this, because I just have some concerns where that is involved for the reasons I've stated. Thank you, Mayor, for hearing me out. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilman Waring, and I would point out that Scottsdale will have a policy before we do, so the residents of Scottsdale will be familiar. We do have some expertise on the phone to let us know how serious a situation this is, so I will begin with Anne-Marie Alamadine. Anne-Marie, the floor is yours, and we will unmute your microphone.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I'm with the Arizona Hospital and Healthcare Association, an 80-member organization across Arizona, and we have been frontline on this COVID response. And as you all know, case rates continue to rise at an alarming rate. We have 46,000 cases in Arizona, 25,000 in Maricopa County today. We have the highest number of inpatient hospitalizations, 1,800 reported today. ICU use is around 80% statewide, and case rates have risen from 6% to 18%, indicating widespread community spread of COVID-19. What we need is effective public health enforcement of what we know works. And I've submitted a letter from the Arizona Hospital Healthcare Association citing two really important studies. Wearing a face mask in public is the most effective means to prevent interhuman transmission. This in conjunction with social distancing, quarantine, and contact tracing. The healthcare community in Arizona is united in this stance that mandatory mask wearing is essential. We sent a letter to the governor. I believe you have a copy of that for the record as well, that reflects just how broad-based this support and this recommendation is. Hospital capacity is a limited resource, and we want to make sure we have enough capacity for all patients who need acute care services, emergency, and we want to make sure we can provide that care. So we need to preserve that. And in order to preserve that, we need the public's help to stop the spread. The virus, it does not just disappear. The virus disappears with evidence-based actions like mask wearing that prevents the spread. So this is what the healthcare community of Arizona is asking and requesting of the council today. We are trying to create a culture of safety in Phoenix and in Arizona. But as we all know, safety and accountability are not just suggestions. We have speed limits. And speed limits are not a suggestion. There's an enforcement action if you violate that, because you risk your own health and safety and those of others if you violate it. Mask wearing, similarly, is exactly the same. So we need that culture. The business community is enforcing this, promoting this with the Masked Up campaign. But we need city government's help in enforcing this. We can't do this alone, and we need people to be held accountable for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We will go next to Natalie Strand, followed by by Sherry Slocum. Natalie Strand will be next.
Hello, I am Natalie Strand. Thank you, Mayor and City Council, for allowing me to speak today. Just to briefly introduce myself, I am a physician here. I have a degree in molecular and cellular biology from the University of Arizona Honors College. I have my medical degree from Mayo Clinic School of Medicine. I'm on staff at Mayo Clinic, but the views I'm expressing today are my own. I strongly support the mandate for mask wearing. Just since June 1st, there have been 3 really important medical and scientific studies that have been published, very influential. The first by National Medical Journal, The Lancet, which reviewed over 170 studies from around the globe for effectiveness to slow the spread of COVID-19. That study found that widespread face mask wearing was very effective and could slow the spread of the virus by 50% or greater. On the 10th of June, a study performed at Cambridge University was published in the Proceedings of the Royal Society, a scientific journal. It also found dramatic effectiveness of face mask wearing in slowing the spread of the virus. They concluded it could be effective enough to prevent the need for another shutdown. Just one day later, on June 11th, a study published by the National Academy of Sciences of the United States of America was published. It stated that universal face mask wearing was the single most effective way to slow the virus, short of a safe and effective vaccine, which we know is a ways out. Recommendations for mask wearing are being ignored. Universal mask wearing needs to be required and not just recommended. It's so simple, it's so easy, it is so inexpensive, and it is dramatically effective. There has also been a study published by MIT showing that cities that had more robust response to pandemics also had faster and more robust economic recovery from pandemics. So as a medical professional and as a citizen of Phoenix, I am asking to please mandate mask wearing for the city of Phoenix. Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry will be followed by Mike Huckins.
I find it offensive and disturbing that your go-to plan is to mandate. Why not reach out to our communities and ask for cooperation instead? Our health decisions are personal, they're private, and that's why they're protected by HIPAA laws. Not everyone can wear a mask. You cannot know who it is without breaking HIPAA laws, so you cannot make a blanket mandate. Mayor Gallego closed down the bars and restaurants in March, followed by more closures from the governor. So will you be delivering the N95 mask to every resident prior to the mandate going into effect? You cannot expect people that you've put out of work to buy their own just for the mandate. Today, people are so scared that they're outdoors doing solo activities and they're wearing masks. It's not healthy. They can't possibly get the virus outside by themselves, and yet you want to mandate that this is what they do. N95 masks are the most effective masks. Not every cloth will protect you. The virus is conflicting at best, all the information out there. The WHO said masks are not necessary. Dr. Fauci said masks are not necessary. Now Dr. Fauci says he lied. Not one model has been correct. So today there is no way with 100% certainty you can say wearing a mask is the best option. Washing your hands and not being in each other's faces are good guidelines. And that's exactly what you should be doing today. Guidelines, not mandates. Who are you relying on for making these decisions? The known liars, like Fauci, where do the mandates stop for what I wear? People wearing red hats upset people, so now we'll mandate no red hat. People are scared of Black Lives Matter t-shirts, so now we're going to mandate no Black Lives Matter shirts in the United States. That's where we live. It's protected by our Constitution, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's freedom. Freedom to make the decisions about our protection and those around us. I don't want to mandate what you can wear or any part of your life, and I did not give up my constitutional rights when you were elected. I don't give you permission to come into my home to tell me what I can wear. When you took your office, you swore to uphold the Constitution. I would like you to read the Constitution and the Bill of Rights before you make any decisions to mandate anything. Thank you very much.
Mike will be followed by Saskia Popescu.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Council members. Mike Huckins here with the Greater Phoenix Chamber. Want to testify in support of the declaration before you this morning. I'd like to thank council staff and mayor staff for reaching out to me yesterday with answer some questions on the social distancing and sort of how that applies to outside workers. Obviously, workers that are working in the summer heat here in Phoenix need to have some sort of relief. So as long as there's social distance, we believe this ordinance would allow them not wear their mask when working outside. So I want to thank the mayor's staff and council staff and city staff for that feedback. I also want to note my appreciation for the Education First strategy. I think that's highly important, as has been mentioned earlier during the meeting. The police department is stretched thin, so I think the Education First strategy is definitely the way to go for our residents and our businesses. And lastly, Mayor, I just want to say the last thing the business community wants to see is another shutdown scenario. Be again disastrous for our economy that's just trying to recover. Obviously, we're not there yet, but we're getting there. So we see this as a way to help stop the spread of the virus to at least some extent. As you all know, a healthy Arizona equals a healthy bottom line. So thank you for your consideration, Mayor and council members.
Thank you. Saskia will be followed by Steve Daniels.
Hi, this is Dr. Saskia Popescu, infection preventionist and epidemiologist, and I would like to wholly support the movement to require community-based mask wearing. I work for a large healthcare system here in Phoenix and as a professor at the University of Arizona. Spending time listening to this, I was extremely disheartened actually to hear the council member previously mention that we simply need to learn to live with this and it's not going away. Conversations of herd immunity are dangerous and do little to stress what needs to be done now. This is a public health crisis and the time for action is now. Furthermore, pushing the narrative of a false dichotomy between public health and the economy is irresponsible and frankly ignorant. Working in the front lines of healthcare and public health, we are stressed, frustrated, and there is a critical need for this measure. The exponential growth rate of cases and increasingly lax attitude of community infection control measures since the stay-at-home orders expired has been deeply worrisome. While what we're seeing is directly related to premature and rapid reopening efforts, now is the time to respond. I implore you to pass these measures and provide communication and education for the community to ensure they are aware, but also have the knowledge of proper mask usage to stay safe. This is also vital in the face of the presidential rally next week, which I worry will create new cases. As hospital capacities are hitting 85% full, a community mask declaration will not only help buy us time to respond, but also signal the importance of social responsibility and the seriousness of this pandemic and outbreak locally. Hospitalizations are a lagging indicator, and once we are at capacity, we can't walk this back. Moreover, we are seeing surges in urgent care cases and clinics, which means these are infectious people in the community who we are dependent upon to isolate appropriately. Mask usage can help address this growing incidence, so it is critical that we avoid this now as the trajectory of cases is pointing to this in the coming weeks as full hospital capacity is moving forward. Now is the time to enforce public health with your help and ensure we have help to curb cases in the community. As an epidemiologist, infection preventionist on the front lines, and a Phoenix resident, I implore you to prioritize public health. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Doctor. We will next go to Steve, followed by Drew Poole.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council, for hearing comments. First, I'd like to say, Sal, I apologize to you on behalf of the mayor because I think it was wholly inappropriate that she attacked you for voicing your concern and opinions. Second, mandatory masks aren't about safety, they're about social control and violation of our civil liberty. This country was founded on the principles of personal freedom, personal liberty, and taking responsibility for yourself and your own safety. To try to mandate that everyone has to do this for the common good is literally a Marxist, communist ideal, and I'm wholly against it. The only way that we're going to keep our country is by demanding our freedoms and not allowing them to be infringed upon. Secondly, a lot of false information has been spread in regards to mandatory masks. I'm reading from the New England Journal of Medicine. This article was put out not 20 days ago. We know that wearing a mask outside healthcare facilities offers little, if any, protection from infection. Public health authorities define a significant exposure to COVID-19 as a face-to-face contact within 6 feet within a patient with symptomatic COVID-19 that is sustained for at least a few minutes, and some say more than 10 up to even 30 minutes. The chance of catching COVID-19 from a passing interaction in a public space is therefore minimal. In many cases, the desire for widespread masking is a reflexive reaction to anxiety over the pandemic. This is nothing more than, again, as I mentioned, social control, trying to pit people against people, businesses against people, to try to maintain a socialist, communist-style agenda. This is subscribing to a New World Order type system. I, for one, will not wear a mask. Nobody will get me to wear a mask. And I hope others do the same. Thank you for my time.
Thank you. Drew Poole will be followed by Rob Fulmer.
Hey folks, thanks for having me. So Drew Poole, co-founder of Renhouse Brewing Company and a born and raised native of Phoenix. I'm speaking for support of the mask mandate. We have personally been closed for the last 3 months, since March 19th, to the public, and have transitioned our business to from a full in-house tap room experience to only to-go and deliveries. And while we have maintained our business being closed, we've seen others reopen and reclose due to new cases. And I think now is the time to set a broad mandate from the city to enforce mask wearing, because there's only so much we can do as our individual business owners, and we can't force people ourselves to wear masks. We can turn them away from our business, but with cases going up, now's the time to set a mandate for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob will be followed by Laura Carpenter.
Mayor, council members, thank you for listening to us today. I'm Rob Fulmer. I'm the executive director of the Arizona Craft Brewers Guild. We represent 13 Phoenix breweries and about 60 in Phoenix Metro. I've listened to you guys today, and I've heard you struggle with all the problems of enforcement and fairness and balancing public health. I just want to tell you about us. Our breweries, along with restaurants, have undergone a myriad of distancing procedures, hygiene practices, surface cleanings, SOPs, PPE, all kinds of changes, and we've furloughed our staff. We brought them back. We've on the fly changed our business models on a weekly basis, moving forward to delivery, to curbside, to to-go business, as you heard Drew Poole talk about. We're now able to open in very, very, very limited ways. Our breweries and restaurants have done all of this, and we continue to face the very same division on this issue that you see yourselves in. The state mandated masks for all servers, and yet no one else. When the state and the cities ask businesses to do these things, they ask our businesses to manage this crisis on our own. We've been asked to police our own houses of hospitality, and we do not see the same level of commitment and responsibility outside of our businesses. If the state and the cities are unwilling to require that everyone do the same thing, we're going to fool ourselves into thinking that we're doing anything other than prolonging this crisis. The heart of our business is serving directly to customers, and we want to continue to do that. And breweries and tap rooms are 60% of how we thrive and survive and employ folks. We can't afford another shutdown. Without a comprehensive mandate that requires all of us to act responsible, we will once again ask our businesses and their employees to shoulder the burden of this impossible task. Our businesses need to hear that city and county governments are taking a uniform stand on attacking this health crisis. Now that the state has mandated cloth masks for all servers, hosts, staff, and employees that interact with customers, it's time for cities and counties to act in a clear and consistent manner. Other cities are waiting for you. Other cities have acted. The Arizona Craft Brewers Guild stands in support of this proposed requirement. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura will be followed by Justin McKay.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council, for the opportunity to speak. My name is Laura Carpenter, and I'm a resident of District 4. As a pharmacist and as a human being who cares for my fellow citizens, I strongly support this measure. The cost of covering your mouth and nose with a piece of cloth is nominal. The cost of not wearing a mask is very high to the public. Wearing a facial covering is a simple, inexpensive step that any individual, including those who may not know they are infected, can take to protect their fellow Arizonans from COVID-19. I do have a question as a point of clarification. Could you please clarify what is meant by when you leave their home, when they leave their home? I live in a high-rise condo. If a fellow resident or guest decides not to wear a face mask in the lobby or gym, they could be exposing me and my neighbors to COVID-19. And if I'm on an elevator and someone decides that they should not be forced to cover their nose and mouth, I have only two choices. First, I remain on the elevator and am trapped with that person and their potential germs. Or second, I leave the elevator, but I have to pass very close with them with about 2 feet to get through the door. Studies have shown that 20 to 30% of the people who are COVID positive are asymptomatic. It's unfair that someone could knowingly or unknowingly infect me because they do not wish to follow CDC guidance. Please vote in favor of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you for that testimony. Justin will be next, followed by Paul Baresi.
Hi, I'm someone who supports masks and support people who wear them. I support businesses who want to require people to wear them, but I would oppose your order to wear masks for at least a couple reasons. Last night, Mayor Gallego says she's offended by street names, so she's going to work to change them. Well, I'm offended by masks. Does that mean I don't have to wear them? No, it's a lame reason to change street names, and it's a lame reason not to wear masks. By that logic, I'm offended by the Holocaust. Therefore, we should steamroll the concentration camp memorials. It's obviously fallacious logic, and it would never fly in any political atmosphere. Here, I want you to understand that you're infringing on my liberty interest, so you better be doing it for a good reason. And it doesn't look like you are. There are countless examples of the government flip-flopping on masks. In February and April, everyone was saying, don't wear masks, don't you dare buy them. Then, oh, masks work, but we need them for healthcare workers. Then they don't, then they do, then Fauci says it's just a symbol. And so now when the government says I must wear a mask, you have to forgive me for questioning it. And then there's a thing with the inmates being released to help stop the spread over the country, including Arizona. Masks apparently don't work in jail, but I must wear one. I'm concerned about enforceability. How could you possibly enforce it? From your discussions, you can't, and you're revealing your complete weakness and inability to do anything meaningful other than change street names. What will you eventually do when I repeatedly refuse to comply? Throw me in jail while you let the criminals out? What about the peaceful protesters? Oh no, it's definitely not their fault. Who are you really going to enforce it on? Blacks, poor, homeless, or regular people who are already struggling to recover from the first stay-at-home order? And after you guys defund the police next year, who's going to enforce it then? A social worker? And for duration, by what metric will you determine that the masks are no longer necessary? Masks were not invented yesterday. They've been around a long time, and as such, there's no excuse for the flip-flopping that we see from the media and government. So I reject the proposed order. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul will be followed by Sean Severud.
Yes, I've heard a lot about education today. I'm glad that that's important to all of you, but this doesn't sound like education. This sounds like coercion. When you use the police, there is force. That's coercion. Before the council makes a decision on this issue, I believe it's entitled to all of the facts. Perhaps you should educate yourselves. I don't know who it is that you've been listening to, which questionable experts you've been speaking to, or maybe you've just yielded to public hysteria. I've actually spoken to people who've been forced to wear these masks as part of their employment, and the consensus is that people are beginning to suffer terrible discomfort and severe health issues because the masks inhibit their ability to breathe. Last time I checked, it's our right to breathe, especially in the service sector, where many must perform strenuous physical labor. You claim to be concerned with our health and well-being. Well, the choice isn't between something completely good, which you claim to be mask wearing, and something totally bad, which is the COVID. The choice is actually between two terrible options. If it's become the case that you've decided to involve yourselves in our lives in such an intrusive manner, and this is very intrusive, then you need to choose the course of action that will lead to the least harm to the public. While COVID may be detrimental to a small percentage of the population, what you're suggesting will affect virtually everyone in a negative way. I mean, I can't believe we're even having this discussion. You're proposing a law which will cause millions of people to have difficulty breathing in order to possibly keep a small fraction of that number from having difficulty breathing? This doesn't make sense. This is the wrong choice. The risks clearly outweigh the benefits. It's better that you do nothing than cause this kind of harm. This hysteria around this virus needs to end, and rational thinking needs to return to the public square. Thank you.
Sean will be followed by Troy Bechtel. We have 10 speakers remaining.
All right, thanks, Mayor and members of council. Just want to say that I fully support making face coverings mandatory in public spaces. I believe that most sensible Phoenicians will agree on this point. This is one issue that Mayor Gallego has shown leadership on, and I thank her for that. At this point, due to the complete absence of leadership at the state level, we have to begin trying to make up for lost time and flatten what is no longer a curve, but a straight-up spike. If there is any real point of contention here today, it should not be should we or shouldn't we, but it's how to do it. I would ask here that the city lead with education, investment, and empowerment. If Phoenicians know what the requirement is, why it is important, and have the opportunity to comply, I believe we will see a high rate of compliance. What we should not do is ask the police to be involved in enforcement in any way. If the police are asked to enforce this, we are setting ourselves up to replace one harm to the community with another, not to mention that we have already been in the mindset of reducing the police footprint, not expanding it. We don't need to add anything else to what we expect of them, what their expectations are. I understand the intent behind going this citation route, and Mayor Gallego earlier stated that there would be no criminalization. But again, what happens when they run their record? What happens if somebody refuses to be ticketed? What happens then? We're creating a situation in which the potential for police to escalate still exists. If we know the vast majority will comply through other methods, why should we involve the police at all? Particularly, Chief Williams mentioned earlier today that she did not have her police department enforcing the stay-at-home order. She did, though. She shut down protests for that reason. She arrested people for that reason. So I just don't think that we can trust her word that she's not going to have her department arrest people using this as an excuse. Thank you.
Troy will be followed by Joanne Lyles.
Hi, thank you for hearing my voice. Just purely from a numbers point of view, unless my math is wrong, for the amount of deaths to date in Arizona, 0.019% of the population have resulted in deaths. And if the New England Journal of Medicine, who is, as far as I know, one of the leading medical references in the United States, says that masks in public don't work, then I don't understand why you wouldn't just let that go and not require us to wear masks. I mean, if you look at everything that's happened, we've been really good with the stay-at-home order. You know, that's borderline violation of the Constitution for my freedoms, but we did it. We saw the greater good and we did it. But now you're asking us to do it again. And I don't think that's enough. I don't understand how you can think that requiring us to wear masks, there's some say yes, some say no. No definitive answers that it actually works is a good idea. My wife is very high risk, and she has chosen not to wear the masks, and she's fine with me not wearing masks. It's a personal decision, and I know it affects other people, but it's not your place as government to tell me what to do when only 0.019% of the population has died from this in Arizona, and this is supposed to be the next plague. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanne will be followed by Brian Maury. Joanne? All right, it appears we do not have Joanne with us, so we will go to Brian Maury next.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, my name is Brian Maury. I'm a Phoenix native. I'm a business professional. I've worked in our schools, our courts, our hotels, our doctor's offices, as well as education and news media. I am bilingual. I have also taught and spoken highly of Phoenix throughout my life around the world. I'd like to begin with a quote. No passion so robs the mind of all its power of reason and persuasion as does fear. That comes from Edmund Burke, one of the framers of the Constitution. I reread our Constitution last night. Ladies and gentlemen of my hometown council, never in my life did I ever think I would be addressing you on such an invasion of personal rights. The numbers are not what they are, Councilman Waring. Have you ever played the game of telephone with adults? I have. I also worked in news media. You people have not seen the virus with your own eyes. Therefore, you cannot say it is a fact. A lot of these individuals are addressing these points. I'm going to move on. I would like to first thank Chief Williams. Ma'am, I heard every word you said. I've heard every word that all of you have said. Please remind your officers, no matter what the council decides, please, in the same spirit that you corrected the council that failing to stop for a stop sign is not the same thing as not wearing a mask. Please remind your officers what they already know. A gun will certainly take a life, and a mask will not certainly save a life. I have masks inhibit First Amendment. Masks inhibit breathing. Councilman DeCiccio, I'm going to pick the ball up where you left it, sir. I don't agree with everything that you say over the course of my life, but you hit the nail on the head here. Every dictatorship in the history of man has begun under emergency orders, line by line, getting rid of personal freedoms. The will of the individuals of the city is known. Do not infringe upon my rights. I will protect them. People who moved here from other places who are used to this type of infringement, they can move back. I'll get them a good deal on their house. God save Phoenix and Arizona.
Gerald Wiebers, followed by Gus Cha. Gerald, can you hear us? Okay. Gerald, the floor is yours.
Mayor, we do not appear to have audio for Gerald.
Thank you. We will go to Gus Cha, followed by Nicole Garcia.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. Good morning, council members. My name is Gus, and I've been teaching in the Valley with my wife for over 7 years now. Masks are a medical precaution. You all are not doctors. You're not my doctor. You're not my family's doctor. And I do not recognize your authority to mandate a treatment for the general public of Phoenix. This is an overstep of your authority in the name of a declaration of emergency, which is a loophole that is being abused in order to infringe on our ability to make medical decisions for our own families. The CDC, the World Health Organization, multiple journals of medical research have been discredited as a result of fabricated stories, flip-flopping, and contradiction. I have been paying extremely close attention to this entire situation, and I can list, don't have the time here, all of the misdirection and panic frenzy that's being created by the media and government officials to infringe on our liberties here in Arizona, which is one of the freest states in the union. It is extremely hypocritical that a lot of people on this council would use the argument for abortion that it's my body, my choice. Well, here's the deal. This is my nose and my mouth. This is God's air. Who do you think you are? My body, my choice is a good enough argument for you not to interfere in 12,000 abortions a year and gay marriage in this city, but it is not good enough for me to refuse to wear a mask. It is absolutely upside down world, and this is the judgment of God on our country. I implore all of you to respect the jurisdiction of your authority given to you by God in Jesus Christ, because you all are moving us towards a totalitarian state, and we will protect our rights. You are poking a sleeping giant by infringing more and more, step by step, incrementally, and I implore you guys to stop what you're doing, recognize your authority, and repent and bend the knee, not to Black Lives Matter, but to Jesus Christ, who is Lord over all. Thank you.
Nicole Garcia will be followed by Nicholas Johnson.
Well, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, well, amen to that last gentleman. I completely agree. I'm adamantly opposed to forcing residents to wear masks in order to buy or sell. Authoritarianism has no place in the land of the free. There's a constitutional argument against this mask wearing mandate. Apart from the fact it restricts oxygen flow and it makes it hard to breathe, it violates our personal liberties that are laid out in the Bill of Rights. You took an oath to uphold the Constitution when you were sworn into office. It is deeply irresponsible for you not to uphold it. Back off with the government interference. Also, if you were concerned with the spread, why were you silent when the rioters came out in mass droves who were actually doing illegal things? Additionally, you have cherry-picked your expert sources. There are 4.5 million people in Maricopa County and 600 deaths. You do the math. The fear-mongering you project on your constituents does not make us think you care. You simply do not trust us to decide what is best for us. I will not be wearing a mask because I am not sick. Forcing a healthy person to restrict their oxygen levels and deterring fresh air getting into their lungs is the dumbest thing I've heard since defund the police. It is blatantly obvious you want to control people. Whether it's through until there's a vaccine or a decrease in cases, what's the plan here? Is mandating vaccines next? You have already destroyed our economy, and now you're pushing this anti-freedom policy. You cite peer pressure. Well, we will not be shamed for practicing our expansive freedoms. You are causing more division in a time of chaos, and that is not good leadership. Benjamin Franklin said, "Those who will give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." We know the recovery rates, and we will continue to get guidance from our own physicians, not our government. So I leave with this. My body, my choice. Don't tread on me.
Nicholas will be followed by Anthony Dunnigan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks for giving me an opportunity to speak today. I just want to address some of the comments that are being made here. First of all, I rise in support of masking policy in Arizona. As somebody who has lived in the Valley their entire life, I would just like to say how incredibly disappointing it is that so many people have such a large issue with something so small and that it's become so political. Wearing a mask isn't a political choice, it's a public health choice. And the fact that people are trying to make this a wedge issue between the left and the right is just continuously mystifying to me. A lot of science denial is happening. If you do simple Google searches online, the science is freely available to everybody. I can understand sometimes it can be confusing, but the message is clear now from the top on down. Masking does save lives. Masking does slow the spread. And I think that it's incredibly important that us as Arizonans together support each other in this rather than trying to make this a political issue. But for people who don't believe in science, I highly suggest that we take a lesson from history. In 1919, the Spanish flu created a massive epidemic across the entire United States. And a great example of masking policy working is in San Francisco, where in 1919-1920, they implemented a masking policy to slow what was then an exponential spread of a deadly virus. The spread did slow until people started screaming about their individual liberties and made it a political issue, and they rescinded the mask order. 20,000 people ended up dying after that. So I encourage anybody who is confused on this issue to become a student of history, to review the historical examples of pandemics and how we, in those cases, failed to protect each other and failed to help each other when all we need to do right now is wear a very simple, very small, and very easy to wear small intervention of a mask. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Anthony will be followed by Harvey Schulman.
Hi, good morning, Madam Mayor, council members. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm Anthony Dunnigan. I'm a internal medicine physician. I was one of the 3,000 plus physicians that recently signed a letter that went to the governor that caused some action that I believe is one of the reasons we're able to speak about this today. I'm a resident of Arcadia area of Phoenix, AKA the hot zone. I'm the father of 2 wily teens, and I'm a statistical nerd. And I want to give you a perspective on that last point. What I believe this mandate will do, and I'm very much in support of it, anecdotally, looking around, it looks like about 50 to 60% of folks are wearing masks that I see at the store, out and about. I believe it's going to take the mandate to get us up in the 80–85% range. Obviously, not everyone's going to wear a mask. I heard some folks today that clearly aren't going to wear a mask. That delta, moving us from 50 to 60% to 85%, will absolutely save lives. The research is evolving. There's a study that just came out of Texas A&M looking at cases in Italy and New York. They estimate the wearing of masks reduced the number of infections by 78,000 in Italy and 66,000 in New York. I'm happy to provide that reference. Why that is, there's YouTube videos. If you see what happens when 2 people are talking and the little spitlets that happen between people that you can't see but are microscopic, wearing a face covering prevents that substantially, which is why we get those reductions in the transmission rate. We'll be able to look about 6 months ahead. We'll be able to compare ourselves to cities and states that did not mandate mask use. And with a fairly high degree of confidence statistically, we'll be able to say we saved X lives. And X lives are our loved ones, our coworkers, and our fellow citizens. Thank you for supporting mandating use of masks.
Thank you. Before we go to Harvey for our staff, I believe we have Harvey and Jane Hendricks are our final 2 speakers.
Mayor, this is correct.
Wonderful. So Harvey, the floor is yours, and you will be followed by Jane.
Thank you. I support your mask proposal. Yet since I last addressed you on April 2nd, the city continues to endanger the health of residents and its own employees. On April 2nd, I asked you, why is planning and development forcing residents to come to the zoning counter in person to file paper copies of submissions for Board of Adjustment public hearings, especially now that we have virtual hearings? Why does PDD require residents who want to testify to register 6 business hours in advance, essentially the prior day, when you require only 1 hour? Most important, how can PDD even impose these procedures when state law says the board has exclusive legal authority to adopt its own rules? I'm in a high-risk group, but since your March closure, I've been forced to come to City Hall to file documents at least 3 times. And every time, 75% of dozens of city employees and visitors I saw were not wearing masks, even visitors coughing or sneezing. One city employee said she's trying to borrow masks from healthcare workers. Now you want to require us to wear masks in public. The protection is overdue, but how about practicing what you preach? How about requiring PDD to stop the nonsense of making us show up in person to file documents, or stop denying our rights to testify at public hearings, or changing the commitments they made to the neighborhoods to do things differently? The PDD people are good people, but their actions are wrong. Or maybe you don't want to care about these details that we can provide. In any event, require masks, but please clean up your own act at City Hall if you plan to require the public and employees of businesses to wear masks. Thank you.
Mayor, this is Ed. We will be in touch with Mr. Schulman and make sure we fully understand and also have connected all the different possibilities of how to work with us online And if we have some gaps, we will address those.
Much. Dr. Jane Hendricks is our final speaker.
Thank you very much for allowing me to, I'm echoing, to speak to the council. And I would just like to speak on behalf of healthy individuals who come to see me as patients who are now suffering from chronic ear infections, shortness of breath, lightheadedness, and exhaustion after working an 8-hour day. I realize that your role is not over the private sector. I just wanted to speak on behalf of formerly healthy patients that are now suffering from some chronic illnesses who have come to see me and other medical practitioners in the field. And I do believe that masks should be worn indoors in crowded places by all those who are immunocompromised over the age of 65 and have comorbidities that increase the risk for the severe complications of stroke, et cetera, from COVID-19. However, the individual who is healthy and taking care of themselves, going to the gym, wanting to do yoga, taking walks outside, should not suffer and put their own bodies at risk of developing some of these illnesses that they're now having to go to Walgreens, go to their doctors, and get medications for. I think that that is a very sad consequence of enforcing these masks. Just watching this meeting on my computer, I saw every one of you touch your mask several times with your fingers. As far as education, I think it's imperative that if you're going to go through with this mandate, that somehow you need to enforce people not to touch their masks. I live in Arcadia in a hot spot. I go to one restaurant that has not mandated their employees to wear masks. Most patrons do not, and there has been no illnesses. They remain open. Porch, Chelsea Kitchen, those places they closed down, all took temperature checks, mandated their employees to wear masks. They had infections and closed and then reopened with a mandation. To the immunologist that said that there is no herd immunity, we would not be alive and talking right now if there was no such thing as herd immunity. We would have died centuries ago from the plagues and the...
Thank you. The city received 374 comments online in support of this policy, 192 in opposition, 34 about the policy but with not opposition, and 9 that were neutral, for a total of 609. We'll turn to the Vice Mayor for a motion.
Yes, Mayor, I want to move and make a motion to approve staff recommendations on this ordinance to comply with the masks.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Do we have a second?
This is Councilwoman. Oh, sorry.
Councilwoman, yes. Thank you.
Just a quick question. Again, we are leading by education, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so we will be leading by education. While we were meeting, the city of Gilbert voted. The city of Gilbert has implemented a policy, and they will also be leading with education delivered by their police department. Many other cities have already moved forward. I had mentioned Scottsdale, but that is certainly not an exhaustive list. Our neighbors from Tempe to Avondale have been as well. Councilman Nowakowski.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, so talking about the education component of it, I haven't heard of the plan yet. I know that we have the city service bill that we can actually put information in on that. A lot of people think it's like the water bill, but it's really the city service bill. We heard billboards. We heard maybe even doing like a robocall to all of our residents in the city of Phoenix, maybe looking at PSAs that we can run through different media, using our city employees that are basically at home right now. Maybe we can actually have them make some phone calls, especially to the areas where we have large amount of people, like at senior centers and other facilities like that. Maybe we can even use some of our city staff that's helping out with the census. How can we use their expertise and marketing and branding that we can actually educate people. And then the other thing is, I'm 100% behind it, and I agree that we should be wearing masks. The only concern I have is I continue to hear individuals saying that the response times from police officers are long when their houses are being broken into, or they happen to have a car that was broken into, that it takes a couple hours, it takes up to 5 hours. And basically, when we do some research on it, it's not really a top priority call if there's not a person that feels that they're in danger. So saying all that, is there any way to use a different or outsource the education component, or not using police officers? Because I've heard from different colleagues and even from some of our callers that when you use police officers, it can be intimidating. And then police officers, if they ever ran a background check on people because of this mask, that if they have a warrant or some kind of outstanding warrant for their arrest, that they can actually be picked up. And I would hate to see something so simple like this turn into something more complicated for individuals. And then when you have police officers, even when a police officer's driving behind myself and I'm going 40 miles per hour and the speed limit's 40 miles per hour, I still start to sweat a little and kind of get nervous. So I'm just wondering if there's any other, how can we use some other entity, if it's outsourcing something or using a different department within the city of Phoenix, to basically educate people for the next 30 days and not using the enforcement of the police officers. That was just something I want to throw out there. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Nowakowski.
Mayor?
I think, Councilman Nowakowski, were you looking for a response from our staff?
Yes, please, Mayor.
Okay.
On the educational part, and also if there's some other way to outsource or use maybe our COVID monies to outsource or use some other department for the education portion for the next 30 days or so. Seeing that we're going to be educating people for at least 30 days, right?
Mayor, Councilman Nowakowski, thank you for the suggestions on education. I took down notes on that for the city service bill. If we have access to PSAs on billboards and city employees, for example, our city employees who work with seniors and with Head Start, they all call their families or their seniors at least once a week, if not more. And so we will add that to the list of check-ins they have to make sure that our clients, as they're calling them, know about the masking order if passed by the council. We can also include this in our census outreach. So thank you for those suggestions. The issue of outsourcing enforcement is one we are not allowed to outsource enforcement of city ordinances unless specifically authorized, which the council did in the charter, for example, with public transit, but we're not authorized to outsource the enforcement of those outside the city. We can use other city employees for education, and the flyers that the chief is talking about, we can make those available to our other employees who are out and about in the community if they see that. And so we will incorporate those suggestions as we're able to.
Ed, Mayor, I have a follow-up question.
Please.
So, Ed, I was just thinking that we have like Phoenix Cares, where individuals see homeless out in our community that need help. And it's such a great program because it actually brings resources and helps those individuals out. Instead of calling the police department, if somebody has a complaint of somebody running around or a group of people without masks, I would hate to have our 911 or even our police hotline being filled with just people calling, or even our council members. I know that we're going to be getting calls saying, well, there's been a group of kids running around the neighborhood without masks. What are you guys going to do about it? How can we use some type of maybe city staff or some type of outside source to educate, not to enforce, but I think I think we were hearing that the first component would be education. So I'm not sure if it's going to be the first 10 days, 30 days, or what it is. But how do we prevent the police from jamming your calls and our offices also, right?
Yes, thank you, Councilman. So in terms of Phoenix Cares, that's a good suggestion. We will make sure that our Phoenix Cares contractors have masks and flyers with them. So as they do encounter those who are called because they're experiencing homelessness or behavioral or mental health issues, which is where our Phoenix Cares staff gets called, that they have the tools and are equipped to be able to help them with that. These flyers we can distribute to our employees who are out there. We can also use our Phoenix 311 center. If people have concerns, they can call there, and we can also address it through those civilians. But I think you raise a good point here, a bigger point that I've heard, and that is that our police officers are not going to be focused on enforcing this order. They have many, many, many other things to do. And one of the best things that this the chief and I have been discussing, one of the best things that people can do who support police and firefighters and first responders is to wear a mask so that our police and firefighters are protected and not brought into a situation. So part of, I think, supporting our city employees and supporting our police department would be for people to wear this protection for the benefit of those folks as well. But we will take these suggestions in terms of education and outreach. We'll work with our Phoenix Care staff, our city employees who contact our residents, and get this out in as many channels as possible, because that's really, Councilman Nowakowski, what I hear you pushing for is this communication needs to be multiple channels, not just depending on police for communication. And we agree with you completely on that.
And Mayor, one last comment.
Please.
Thank you. And then, Ed, I think that I like to educate the public that they won't be calling the police officers if they happen to see a young person walking down the street. But maybe there's some other type of number that we can call where we can actually maybe educate people on it, or people will be calling our offices saying, hey, what can you do? So I just want to make sure that I understand that, but I think we need to educate the public. And the other thing is on Laura's, how she displayed the different masks or different methods of I think that was a good idea. How can we create sort of a PSA doing something like that? Because I think a lot of people, until they actually view it or see it, they can understand it. Because we can talk all until we're blue in the face about masks, but I think that that demonstrated really well, and I think we should use, her idea and make that into a PSA, and then maybe we can use our commander, Steve Matos, to be one of the people that put on the masks also. Thank you.
We'll either take a clip of the council meeting with Councilwoman Pastor's demonstration, or we'll create something else, but it was a very good demonstration. So in all seriousness, Channel 11, we will work with them on a PSA, because showing those quick and easy ways to do that are very good. And just for the record, Mr. Martos is here and he is wearing a mask.
Thank you, Councilman Nowakowski, and some really good ideas about how we can promote this. I would certainly be willing to contact our billboard companies and ask them if they would be willing to help us. And to the extent we have availability of the mobile street department signs, I think that might also be a good opportunity. Councilman DeCiccio.
Oh, thank you, Mayor, and I'll be really quick. I want to apologize to Councilwoman Pastor if she feels that we said or did something that was disrespectful to her. We had over 18,500,000 interactions on social media these last few days, and I think over 63,000 comments. And I tried looking as best I could to find that. And if you could help me narrow it down to where we mention you, I'd appreciate that, because I just like to see it. But I tried to take a look at this as we're doing some of this, trying to do some multitasking. And like I said, we've had, multi-millions of contacts, and I just can't see it anywhere. So if you want to just private message me later, if you want to do that, I don't want to bring it up at the council meeting and stuff, but I cannot find that that you're referring to. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman DeCiccio, Mayor, it was taken down.
Please.
It was taken down.
Okay, well, give me more details as to when and all that, and I'd like to take a look. But literally, like I said, we had 18,500,000 interactions in the last, I think, 4 days. So imagine something could have happened in that, but if you could just let me know more, if you don't mind. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. I have briefly lost this video, so if anyone wanted to speak, if you could say verbally.
Mayor, I'd like to speak if I can. It's Jim.
Councilman Waring.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I respect all of you guys, and I am not in any way criticizing the thoughts behind this. I guess I'll just put it that way. I understand the numbers. I understand it's going up. I'm not claiming I understand it as well as a scientist. I'm not claiming I'm a doctor or anything. I am not saying masks work or don't work. I make the personal choice to wear it. Others clearly are making other choices. Frankly, I try to limit my contact to people who aren't wearing masks. That's my personal view. I'm not anti-science, and I'm not politicizing the issue. One person said that, but I don't know if they were directing at me, but I hope you guys know me well enough to know I'm not trying to do that. This is too serious. It's not something to be messed around with. But I am very realistic, and I always try to have, my government offices be realistic about what government can and can't do. And for those who would discount, for example, government expansion, a couple of years ago, this council and everybody who's on the council now, who was on the council then, voted for this, except for me. We criminalized feeding pigeons. You could theoretically go to jail for feeding pigeons. To the chief's point, that's probably not going to happen. But the fact that that was even in play, that's just concerning. That just shows how this can go. So actually, there's a bigger penalty for potentially for feeding pigeons than for not wearing a mask. I understood the intent then. There was a few houses where this is a problem, but again, is that something we should really be weighing into with our police? I understand this is not criminalizing this activity, but it still gives one, I hope, pause for thought. I thought we were realistic 3 days ago with the bus situation. I voted for it. I thought that was realistic. That's something we control. Ed, I thought was realistic in having staffers wear masks. That's something we control. That's something that we have the wherewithal to work on at least. The buses, we're going to put police on every bus, but it's a more manageable group of people. It's not 1.7 million or more, plus all the people coming through the airport and so forth. Michael Nowakowski's point about stretching police thin was well stated, and obviously I've heard, as I mentioned, from a police group saying we're stretching police kind of thin as it is. So now we're really expanding the police footprint, which I'm not always against. This is fairly expansionist, though, to my mind, and I'm pro-police, and they do a great job. But again, if we're going to criminalize feeding pigeons, that kind of puts a lot of stuff in play, makes me a little nervous. Obviously, there's no end in sight to this, so who knows how long we've been mandating masks. It does put police in more contact with residents. It's very open-ended. I think stores can already ban people apart from us and what we're doing today for not wearing masks, and this isn't really changing that. I understood, and I think he was a doctor, and I apologize, I can't remember his name, but the fellow who talked about trying to raise the levels of compliance to wearing masks, if you consider that compliance. So he was saying, I think it's 70% now was kind of his ballpark. I would say it's a little higher when I go out, like I said, to the grocery store or wherever. That's limited, but I'd say at least in the northern part of the city with which I'm more familiar, I'd say that's fair. I don't know how much higher that's going to go with this. I thought the point was well taken, again, by Michael Nowakowski about it's great that Laura is so adept at changing clothing and other things into masks, but that doesn't mean everybody knows how to do that. So having people out there who can help with that, might increase as much as anything, people wearing the mask. People who can't afford a mask are now like, okay, I don't have to buy a mask, I can do this. Us buying masks for people would probably do as much, is my guess. And that may sound strange coming from me. I did the DUI bills in our state when I was in the legislature, or at least the harsher DUI bills, and I raised the penalties, right? It was the financial penalties were pretty extreme, and that worked. People modified their behavior, and fatalities and injury accidents plummeted. But this is a different kind of issue. This is people living their lives, not engaging in criminal behavior. And again, I know we're not criminalizing it, but the chief's answer about are they going to be looking at warrants or not, I don't know that I ever really got a completely clear answer. And again, I'm not averse to looking at warrants, but you know, I just at some point, this is now giving police another reason to contact you when we're struggling a little bit with the contacts we're already having, which are about 1.2 million contacts by our police department on the front line per year. So it's not that I'm against the intent of this or anything that any educated person has said on either side, but for the scientists and doctors who testified, I understand what you're saying. I just, at some point, our powers are more limited than I think people realize. People are not going to just start wearing masks because we mandate it tomorrow. They're not going to hear what we did. They're going to be confused by what we did. They're not going to know how to make their own masks, etc. And now we potentially are going to have officers contacting them. We can say our officers are doing other things. They're going to be busy with other things. They're not going to be bothering those people. Then why are we including them in the policy? That doesn't make tons of sense to me. If we're not going to be keeping records of who's not complying, so if we contact them again, or if we're going to do that in a little bit of a haphazard fashion, or etc., I don't understand why that would be included then. When a couple days ago we didn't go that route, and so I just want to make some of those points. To a final point, and perhaps the most important, Michael Nowakowski, do not encourage Steve Martos if you can, because it just leads to disaster. So don't put him in a public service announcement, Ed. Get Laura to do it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'll vote for Steve.
Any additional council member comments before we vote? Roll call.
DeCiccio,
No.
Garcia,
Mayor, may I explain my vote?
Please do.
Oh, one thing that's a fact is that we're not only leading the leading the nation right now in infection rates. I think we as a city need to take this seriously. I think in the absence of having a public health department, which I think is something we really need to look at, the fact that
We have one in Maricopa County. We have one in Maricopa County. Sorry.
Excuse me? Who's that?
It's Councilwoman Stark. We do have a public health facility. It's Maricopa County. Thank you.
I understand that, Councilwoman, but we do not have public health experts within our city staff. We do not have a public health department within the city of Phoenix. And I think being the 5th largest city in the country, that is not okay. I would love to be able to have public health experts at our disposal to create these PSAs, to be able to come up with a strategy of how we implement this mask wearing. I would love to have that at our disposal. And I think it's actually urgent that our city think about making that happen. In that absence, I think my concerns are with the police department now having to enforce this. I am going to take Chief's words today and just reminding folks of what criminalization actually means. And I think, Mayor, I hope you understand the expansion of criminalization and that contact with police means criminalization and leads to criminalization. We've literally been talking about a case in recent weeks that happened 3 years ago of a man who simply had their dog in one of our community centers and was attempting to use the restroom. That man ended up dying at the hands of our officers because of a police call of him having a small dog in the community center. I really do hope that we lead education first. I really hope, and thank you, Ed, for bringing that up, that we can provide as much masks as possible, that we work with partners to make sure that masks are available. My family, myself, anytime we leave our home, we are already masking up. And so to the officers that will be enforcing this, please see this as a public health role, not your usual role. And I hope the chief can can get that out to every officer and to everyone watching. Please wear your mask, not just for yourself, but for others. And so I'm with you all. Let's do PSAs. Let's do what we can to save lives and mask up. And final thought to the police department, if we could please get reports daily or whenever we meet to make sure that we understand how it's going out there, how people are responding, and to make sure that we're not unnecessarily criminalizing or putting people in more risk by enforcing this. With all that, I vote yes.
Nowakowski.
Mayor, I'd like to explain my vote. I'll be voting yes on this, but with the understanding that we're not going to be using the 911 or non-emergency phone number to have people complain about individuals in their neighborhoods and the stores and this and that, not running around without masks. I think that we need to figure out some other way of educating people and informing people. So I'm very comfortable with what the city manager was saying, that we would try to outreach with using billboards, PSAs, and maybe even using one of our commanders as a model. And with that, I feel comfortable and I'll be voting yes.
Mayor, I just want to clarify, we are not in any way encouraging the 911 number to be used at all. This is not a 911 call. We do, however, use the Crime Stop as one of the contact points, 262-6151. But to the councilman's point, 911 is not an appropriate call for this type of issue.
Thank you.
Pastor.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Waring.
No.
Williams.
Yes, but I would ask the chief to put that flyer out on Nextdoor. That contacts a lot of neighborhoods.
Great idea.
Yes, we'll do that.
Guardado.
Mayor, I want to explain my vote.
Please do.
So I am going to be voting yes for this, but I just want to make sure that we're all very clear that we need to do this for our essential workers, for our children, for our vulnerable population. The numbers keep going up every single day. I think that the education piece is going to be incredibly important. I've seen other states that are doing this, and I think that we're moving in the right direction. And hoping with all the PSAs and everything that we're going to do, we'll get the word out. People will start wearing the mask. I think that it's going to take a village. It's going to take all of Phoenix working together to be able to flatten this curve. And I am very happy to be part of this team, and I am going to be voting yes. Thank you, Mayor.
Gallego.
Thank you. We are in the midst of a pandemic. Phoenix and Arizona are seeing a rapid increase in cases of COVID-19. Public health professionals tell us that there are steps we can take to slow the spread and that facial coverings are an incredibly important tool. With today's vote, the Phoenix City Council is moving forward to protect our community. This is an important tool, and we look forward to working with other Arizona cities to slow the spread. I vote aye.
Motion passes 7-2.
By a 7-2 vote, the Phoenix City Council has implemented a policy requiring facial coverings in public to slow the spread of COVID-19. This meeting is adjourned.